Well, ain't that just the darndest thing? Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. Thank you so much for joining me here for a special news video. Now, I've not been doing these news videos very much because I have launched the iCritic Live podcast, which you can subscribe to here, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Deezer, whatever podcast series you or listening service you decide to listen to podcasts on, we are there. And so I've been doing most of these topics on those in audio format. But this is a special case where I believe we should have a face-to-face, heart-to-heart talk about what's going on with Funimation and Crunchyroll and digital media ownership, because there's been a lot of questions about that recently, especially with streaming services continuing to take projects off sites. In fact, Disney Plus just did a purge of like 150 shows and movies, and now you cannot stream those on Disney Plus. So hopefully you have a physical copy or you can't watch it. But I have been advocating, and many people have been advocating for a while, like digital futures are scary. Digital futures, while they are convenient and while there are some practical uses for them, if you buy something digitally, it does not belong to you. Now, a lot of people have been cutting the physical media bandwagon for a while, saying like, well, you know, I've never lost a movie, I've never done this. And a lot of events recently have been happening to change that perception. For example, there was that whole debacle with Sony where their license expired with Discovery or something, and guess what? If you had bought something through them, you were just simply losing that content. There was no refund, no nothing. And it was like pretty scary. Now, I think they did something to resolve that, but it was like, hey, if you had spent a lot of money on buying these shows digitally on the Sony PlayStation storefront, you were going to lose them. And there was nothing you could do about them because that's what you agreed to. There was also that situation with Google Stadia. Now, when Google Stadia shut down, they did refund games that you purchased, but if you paid for their service and you got those quote-unquote free games, even though that's what you were partially paying for, then guess what? You didn't get refunds for that service fee, you didn't get to transfer your games, you just lost them. And there's even this scary situation with the Xbox right now that Microsoft might be leaving the console business and turning Xbox into a streaming brand, which means, well, what if you bought music and videos and things through one of their Xbox services and platforms? Like, what's going to happen to that? Because, I mean, yeah, you could say like, well, look, these companies are never going out of business, so theoretically this stuff should never go away, but what if the company decides to actually get rid of it themselves? Then what do you do? Pretty scary, huh? And now we get to the big news that Crunchyroll is finally shuttering Funimation on April 5th. After April 5th, there is no more Funimation website, there is no more Funimation app, everything is being shut down. And look, we knew this was going to happen. Like, when the purchase was made, like, the corporate overlords at Sony decided that Crunchyroll was the more valuable name, therefore everything would be Crunchyroll. I don't think they actually shuttered the Funimation office. I think they just rebranded it to like Funimation West or Crunchyroll West or some Crunchyroll East, something like that. So thankfully, not a lot of people lost their jobs. That's one of the few good things about this merger that happened. But there were a lot of concerns about what would happen going forward, because now Crunchyroll, in many ways, was a de facto monopoly. I remember when I was buying VHS and DVDs of anime, and you had many companies. You had, aside from Funimation, you had ADV, and you had Pioneer, and you had, which became Geneon later on. You had Media Blasters, yada yada, Central Park Media, yada yada yada, Tokyo Pop. Well, a lot of those companies are gone now, and some of the ones that are still around don't even do anime anymore. Tokyo Pop certainly doesn't do anime seriously anymore. And now you basically have Crunchyroll, which is the big one. You have Sentai Filmworks, which was basically ADV rebranded. and you have Discotek Media. And by the way, I love those guys, but they're licensed rescuers. They're not going to, for the most part, go and license a new anime unless it's part of something that they already have previously dealt with. So really, Crunchyroll is the de facto monopoly. And there was just questions. I knew there was going to be problems. Like, look, once this becomes readily apparent that they can do whatever they want, what are they going to do? Now, one of the first things they're doing that, and this is definitely sticking out to a lot of people, they are raising their subscription service. They're going from $55 a year to $100 a year, or $54.99 to $99.99. An 82% increase. And we were complaining about Disney Plus and Netflix raising prices a couple bucks every few years. An 82% price increase. And they're doing this because, you know, they want to improve the quality of the service, the catalog. They also say competition, ironically enough, even though the only other anime streaming service really is High Dive. I guess Retro Crush is also out there, but Retro Crush has made deals with like Peacock and things to share their animes. So if you have like a Peacock subscription, you don't really need a Retro Crush. But you know, anyway, it's going up 82% because they have the monopoly now. They took out one of their competitors, and High Dive isn't much of a competitor, and Retro Crush really, they're kind of just doing their own thing, so they're not in competition either. So now they can raise the price to $99.99. And look, here's the thing. I'm going to pay because, first of all, they have a monopoly. I don't agree with this belief that, you know, if they raise the price, that gives you the right to pirate it. Like, if they're going to take the series away and you have no legal access to it anymore, then yes, sail the seven seas. But sailing the seven seas because you just don't want to pay for it, that is something that I don't agree with. Hey, so I have to add this very little addendum to this, if you will. While I was editing the video, I discovered that Funimation never actually sold digital copies during their website. These digital copies only came with purchases of DVDs and Blu-rays. So I do want to mention that, even though I don't think it changes the crux of the argument that you don't own your digital library, but I don't want such an obvious error to remain unchecked here. And of course, with like the Discovery situation, you did pay for your movies, and if you bought things on the Microsoft Store and that goes away, you know, so it's still a fair point, even though technically Funimation wasn't doing this in particular, but you're still losing your stuff. But the other thing that was in this announcement, and this is really the main core of what we're talking about, even though we're now 7 minutes into this thing, well, there was a digital storefront for Funimation where with select Funimation titles, you would get like a digital code so that you could get a digital copy of the anime on Funimation's website. Now, half these codes didn't work, so, you know, it was like kind of like a small thing. But, you know, I have some anime on the Funimation storefront, and some people were buying the anime directly from Funimation on the Funimation storefront. And the reason a lot of people do this is because if you like go to some of these storefronts to buy anime, they will give you the option to buy it dubbed or subbed, whereas if you bought it from Funimation themselves, you could watch it dubbed or subbed for the same price. And isn't that what you want? You want options. So if you were going to buy these anime digitally, of course you're going to buy it from Funimation. And there are some people who have admitted they spent thousands of dollars investing in their Funimation digital library. Well, what's going to happen to that? Because one of the things that Crunchyroll said is like, oh, if you have a Funimation account, you can link your Crunchyroll account and like your watch list and your queue and everything will transfer right over. So great. But what about the digital copies that you got from your DVDs and Blu-ray purchases, or that you bought straight from Funimation themselves? And the answer is nothing. Now here's Crunchyroll's response, and you can read it. I'm not going to read it out loud. It's there. You can pause the video. I mean, they kind of say like, we understand like your concerns about that, and you think that they're gonna for a second offer like something like, hey, your digital purchases are going to go to Crunchyroll, which, by the way, that would make sense for Crunchyroll to start selling their stuff digitally directly to the consumer anyway, but nope, it never comes. It's just basically your SOL. You got nothing that you can do. That anime is going away. And if you purchased it, then guess what? You're not getting a refund either. And of course, this leads some people to say, well, wait a minute, I bought it, I own it, and this is something that a lot of us has been saying for a long time. You don't own your digital media. If you watch someone like Adam Korlick, by the way, who I was thankfully lucky enough to meet in Germany, he has made videos about the dangers of digital ownership. Now, you also have people like Serial at Midnight who says that digital is not the bad guy. And by the way, I agree. Digital does not have to be the bad guy. There can be a combination of both. What I do not want to see is something where it's all digital, because this is what can happen. Like, Crunchyroll is taking this, they could easily come up with a solution to transfer this anime over to their website. They could easily create like a digital store for their website. They could do something like that, but no, they would rather just say, hey, look, it's digital. You never owned it in the first place, so therefore, tough luck. You're not going to get it now. And this is just one more thing on what's going to push people away from digital. Now, in a way, I kind of like that it's happening because, it's ironic because this is the second situation from Sony, one of the biggest movie companies in the world, and they have some of the classic films, and now they have like all this great anime, and they're basically, this is the second time where it's like, hey, yeah, that stuff you bought, it's going away. Digital is not ownership. It never was, and it probably never will be unless there is legislation passed that will make it ownership. Like, personally, I agree with John Campea. He had like a very sensible solution, like, hey, there should be a law that says if a company goes out of business or they plan to shutter a service, they have to, for like a month, make all of the stuff, purchases that people made available to download, DMR free, whatever file format they want it to, and they have to do that. That should be a safeguard that's in place so that you can, keep the stuff, the digital stuff that you purchased. But there's no law like that, and there's nothing to stop them from doing this. And this is also a little bit of a short-sighted move, because some people might say, well, Sony doesn't really have like a video on demand service. Oh, yes, they do. They do. I mean, I know most of you use iTunes. I use Vudu and Movies Everywhere, of course. But Sony actually has a video on demand app called Sony Pictures Core. And of course, it's mainly where you can buy Sony picture movies and shows. And they don't really push it that much. But what a missed opportunity for them to say, hey, we've got this service called Sony Pictures Core. If you want to keep your digital anime, sign up for an account here, merge it, and it will be transferred to this new service. And then you've got, I don't know how many new signups for your Sony Pictures Core. So even ignoring the ethical problem of this, where they are just deleting stuff that people paid for, and that is never okay, they're being stupid, and because this is an opportunity to move people to this app that, from my perspective, is not downloaded very much. Now, granted, it's not widely available. I think they just made it available for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. I don't even think it's on Apple or Roku yet, but like, this would be an incentive to get people to sign up for that account, and at least you would have a new audience, and then maybe you could use that audience to get on some of these other platforms. So Sony is being dumb about this as well. But take this lesson, if nothing else. Well, there's two lessons. First of all, monopolies are bad. This is why, they can delete the stuff and, give you an 82% hike on your service. Just saying. But the second and most important thing, digital is not ownership. Never was, and it never will be. If you really want to own something, you purchase it physically. Otherwise, it's just a rental. Hey, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Just a few more things. First of all, the names that you see on the screen, these are our Patreon and YouTube member supporters. And I thank each and every one of them. Their support helps me make exclusive videos for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as keep the channel running. And of course, is just of huge kindness to me. Also, don't forget to check out the iCritic-led podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Deezer, whatever podcasting service you listen to. It is there. We definitely want to see you there. And hey, there's also other videos that you can check out. So, check out these other channels, these other videos, especially that one. I think that's a really good one.